All right, so we can go ahead and start seated. And for this first part of class, absolutely sit wherever you're most comfortable. That could be a chair, it could be your couch. If I were practicing without teaching, I might be like on one of my little cushions over there. So wherever you're the comfiest is the place I want you to be. And we'll start in that comfy place with a nice tall posture. Not anything too rigid or stiff, but something that feels alive. At this point, please feel free to have your eyes open or closed and your hands resting gently wherever it's most comfortable. And let's just take a moment to arrive to our practice, arrive to our mat. And just notice the state of your mind, the state of your being. I know for me, I've had a really busy day. I've worn lots of different hats. And so my mind still is swimming from everything that has come before this moment. And oftentimes, when we've been busy and we finally take that moment to sit still, everything sort of catches up to us. Allow everything to be part of your experience. Any sounds in the background, any thoughts in your mind. Any little tweaks or aches or pains you might feel in your body. Let all of it be part of the richness of this moment, softening your jaw, softening your forehead. No matter what kind of day you've had thus far, take a moment to acknowledge that you have chosen to practice being in the present moment, leaving everything else to the side for now. Taking time to tend to yourself. If you're practicing with me live or shortly after the recording of this, it's June. It's the week of the full moon. And even though most of us in Nebraska have had pretty temperate weather, warmer days are ahead. So our practice today will take us through June into July, and it's all about stillness, cooling our nervous system, regulating our nervous system. So, three more cycles of your breath, arriving here in the present moment, letting everything settle, knowing that the process of settling, the process of being in the present moment, there's no end to that. There's no end point. It's really a moment by moment practice. So, with this nice enlivened posture, let's just gently turn our body to the right. So, you can place your hands wherever you want. We're just turning ourselves a little to the right. Maybe you can invite in a slightly deeper breath, inviting in stillness, letting go of any need to be busy. Then in the same way, we'll turn to the left now. Just nice and easy, moving through the spine. And as we turn the spine, all of the organs, the internal organs, have to accommodate one another. And then we'll return to the center and we'll do a couple of things that are more watery like to help counterbalance the heat. This first thing will be stirring the body around. So moving yourself around in a circle. There's all different types of ways that you can do it. Do it in a way that feels flowy and intuitive and nice and liquidy for you. And then if you'd like, turning and churning in the other direction, almost like an old school washing machine, cleansing the residue of the day. And then we'll come to the center and move in sort of like a seated cat cow. So inhale, heart forward, maybe even lift the chin if you'd like, and then exhale, rocking back. So moving in a way again that feels nice and fluid. It doesn't have to be exactly like what I'm doing. You all know that you can add in your own flavor. And then we'll come to the center and do one more flowing movement. Fingertips toward the floor. Maybe they'll even touch. Inhale, sweep one of your arms up, whichever one you want to start with. Then exhale, sweeping the arm down. So we want to move that slowly. The inhale is the sweeping up. The exhale is the sweeping down. Do a few more just like that. So that even before we've really done anything else, already so far we've moved our spine in lots of different ways. Once or twice more each side so that you feel like you got an equal number from left to right. And when you have found that equal left to right, we'll pause in the center and then just check in with how you feel. For me, I know I'm already feeling better. And I will say on the days that I need yoga the most, it's the hardest to actually show up. All right, beautiful. So we're gonna come on down to the ground. It's sort of my favorite way, even though we started seated with some of those things. Coming to the ground just always feels like a nice centered, homey place for me. So we'll come on down to the ground and start in constructive rest. You can see I've got all my props peppered around my space because I just never know what I'm going to want on any certain day. I go with the flow and I see what my body is asking for. So as you start here in your constructive rest with your feet wide, knees narrow, just let yourself be held by the ground. Feel the generous support for the spine, for your hips, and for your head. Feel the support for your mind and all of the thoughts that you've had over the day. And then we'll keep our feet wide to the edges of the mat and bring in a little windshield wiper motion. So again, you're always just wanting to go with the flow, listen to your body as best as you can. Better to do less than more, especially with a cooling practice like today. A few more side to side. And then the next time our knees are toward the right, we're going to hold there. So, if possible, if it feels okay for your body, your feet are still wide. That allows us to get a little bit more into the top of the left hip flexor. But if that doesn't work for you, maybe it doesn't feel stable enough for your knees, you could stack the legs. So you can either have the legs stacked as I'm showing now, or if it feels okay, you can have the feet mat width apart, and you can even use props under one or both legs. And then depending on how you feel, you can keep your head exactly where it is, or your head could turn to the left. One of my favorite things about yoga and what makes it different for me than all of the other things I do is that by its nature, it works on multi levels. So it's the eight limbs of yoga, which is the poses are only one of those eight limbs. We've also got breath and mindfulness, among other things. And then another framework in yoga is the koshas. It's the five layers of being. And that first layer is the physical. So we address that through the poses. Then we've got the energetic layer, which is through our breathing and our awareness of the meridians and yin. And there's also that mental mind stuff layer. And then the fourth layer is your mind, but it's that deeper reflective discernment, that ability to know that you aren't your thoughts. You're the person observing your thoughts. And then that fifth layer is being, the I amness. All right, nice and slowly, let's shift the knees to the left. So, same thing on this side. You could have your feet mat width apart. So, you're getting into the top of that right hip flexor. If you prefer, you could stack the legs, you could use props. Your head is wherever it naturally wants to be, or it could be turned to the right. Then maybe you notice which of those layers, the physical, energetic, mental, the witnessing, which of those layers might need the most loving attention for this particular practice? Find a softness through the face, through your jaw, and ease through your breath. About three more cycles of your breath. Knowing that whatever layer sort of needs attention, the favorite thing about yoga is that all of the layers get their attention. Bringing the knees to the center and either constructive rest or shavasana. So we're going to take a moment to pause, finding the body as symmetrical as possible so you can really tune in to your energy field. All right. And then the next pose will be one that's going to really focus on our side bodies because we're still kind of moving out of that spring energy of wood. And so side body stretches are really good for wood element, which is liver and gallbladder. So banana asana has been my favorite side body stretch because it kind of gets from tip of the toes to the crown of the head. So we'll take the legs over to the right and then curve your upper body to the right as well. And then you decide, do you want to cross one of your ankles on top? Would you prefer to have the legs side by side? And then same thing with possibly taking your arms overhead or resting them on your body or anywhere else they feel the most easeful. And just having faith that the yoga does what yoga does. It works without us having to put too much thought into it. The shapes combined with the breath will do all of the work for you. June is one of my favorite months, partly because my birthday is June. My birthday is actually Friday. My sister's was this past Saturday. My dad's was the week before that. It's also my wedding anniversary. So lots of fun things to celebrate, including summer solstice. So in about a week, we'll be at the peak of summer. So it's a time for us to practice more cooling poses and breath and mindfulness, all in the name of balance. Two more breaths here. Maybe even encourage your breath, invite your breath to the left and the right of your rib cage. And we'll start to come out of the pose and pause in the center. A moment of compassionate observation of what is here for you in this present moment. Right. And then we'll do the same thing, banana asana over to the left. So the legs to the left, deciding if you want to cross the legs or keep them side by side, making a choice about your arm position that works for you, knowing that all you need to do is breathe. And sometimes when we're nice and still and quiet, we notice things that we didn't notice in our busyness. For a lot of us, myself included, sometimes it's a really busy mind. Or I'm also noticing like a neighbor mowing their lawn, the sound of a bird, things that in my busyness I don't even notice. For these last two or three breaths, again, you might want to invite your breath out to each side of the ribs, maybe into the back of your ribs. Fully expansive breath. And then we'll return to center when you're ready, taking that moment to pause and notice. Okay, so let's bend the knees, bringing the soles of the feet to the floor. I have one more thing we'll do here on our back. It addresses the wood element in the hips, which also helps with stress reduction. But it's also a prep for a pose that we'll do seated that's more for the water element. So I'll ask you to cross your right ankle over the top of your left thigh, and we'll come into a supine pigeon. So your left foot could stay on the floor, you could put it on a prop, or you could hug the left thigh in, whatever works best for you. And then just allow this pose to melt away any tension or stress, especially in that right hip. And if you can think about a nice, easeful breath, that will help calm your nervous system, which will actually help calm your physical tissues around the hip joint as well, including your fascia. Just notice for these last couple of breaths if the sensation of tension or tightness in your hip has changed at all. For me, it's subsided a bit. And then we'll take our time to switch to the other side. So as you cross the left shin or ankle over the right thigh, remember you have choices. You can have that right foot on the floor, it could be on a prop, or you could hug the right thigh in. And for me, just noticing that melting of physical tension, mental tension as I stay in the pose and simply breathe. Last couple of breaths. And then as we release, let's hug both knees into the chest and we'll invite in a little bit of that water element with some movement here. So your knees will separate out to each side and then circle around and come back towards each other. So you're separating the legs, circling around and bringing them back together. Maybe about 3 to 5 circles each direction. The circles don't have to be of any particular size. They could be small, medium, or large. Maybe a couple more. But in your own time, as you're ready, we will start our transition to seated. We'll do a couple of seated positions. And the first one that we'll do will be a seated half butterfly, half dragonfly. So let's have our left leg straight and your right knee bent. And just remembering, you always want to feel supported through the joints. So if you feel like you want to have a blanket or something soft like a throw pillow under that straight leg and that feels good for you, please do. You might also and or want something under the bent knee side. So you're just thinking about like, what do I need so that I can fully immerse in this pose? And then we'll be coming forward. So as you come forward, you might have your hands on the floor. If you have props, you could use props, whether it's bolsters. If I didn't have bolsters, I would use my little foot cushion over here and just slide it in. So you can use furniture. But you're coming forward to the degree that you start to feel a stretch in the legs, particularly the straight leg. And I'll just kind of share a little, maybe TMI, but I'm noticing I keep reminding you, and I have for a little while, the past few weeks, just reminding people to relax their jaw, soften their jaw. And it turns out, I think I was subconsciously doing that because I was having a little bit of a dental situation. I got a lot of orthodonture stuff done when I was a kid that may or may not have actually needed to have been done. And one of those, like one of my retainers came loose a few weeks ago and I didn't know, and it created a misalignment of my teeth. So I've been clenching my jaw for weeks, not really knowing why. Um, we're on the right track to get everything fixed, but I mention that because your body, I feel like it was trying to tell me something and I just was ignoring it. So if you're in this pose and you notice discomfort, maybe it's your jaw, maybe it's your knee, you want to do something to take care of yourself, to support yourself. And for you, maybe it's not the jaw, maybe you're noticing that you're having tension through the brow or the hands, or maybe the tension shows up through repeated ruminating thoughts. One more breath. And then as we start to come up, we can keep the legs as they are if that's comfortable for you, or you could extend both of them, but just lean in the opposite direction a little bit if you'd like, or sit completely upright. But we just want to kind of counter pose the forward fold with a little bit of a lean back. And then let's set up our second side with just as much care and intention as the first side. So now the right leg will be the long one, the left knee will be bent. You're supporting anywhere that you need to. I gave example of the knees, but you may want to have a blanket underneath you. And then either coming directly forward using your arms for support, using anything that you have nearby. I know that the breath is one of the main gateways to calming your nervous system. So if we can have a slow, regulated breath, it helps regulate your nervous system as well. In a compassionate, non-judgmental way, just notice if there's a place in your body where you're gripping or holding or tensing, or maybe you don't need to. One more breath. And then we'll start to come up. And again, you might want to stretch completely upright or lean back a little bit in the opposite direction. And then we'll take a moment to lovingly lengthen our legs and just give a nice little massage, especially around the knees, maybe the hips. All right. So, guess what pose we're going to do? Reclined butterfly. It's my absolute favorite. And it really is, it's like, I don't know, what's something that works for everything? It works for everything that you can think of. So as you set up for your reclined butterfly, I know all of you are familiar with it, but remember, every day is a little different. So for me, a lot of times the go-to is to have two bolsters or using two items. So I have this incline, but sometimes I prefer to lay directly on the ground. It kind of just depends. Do I want that little bit of a heart opener, that slight back bend, or would I prefer a nice flat kind of firm? So it's totally up to you whether or not you do that or if you lie on the ground. And then we'll be here creeping up on like 7 minutes or so, which means you want to be comfortable and supported. So as the soles of the feet come together, supporting the legs, whether it's with throw pillows or blankets or blocks. And then for me, my basement is nice and chilly, which most of the time I love. But when I'm in a still pose, I just feel like I need a little blanket for warmth. So you can always add a blanket. Just that reminder that we're coming up on the summer solstice, the beginning of summer, which is also the longest day of the year, longest daylight hours, the longest sun. So for these weeks surrounding the middle of June, it's nice for us just to find cooling activities, swimming or a bath, not letting ourselves get too overheated emotionally or physically. Breath by breath, allowing yourself to settle in more and more into the present moment. Checking in and making sure you feel comfortable, and if not, making any adjustments for our last 2 minutes here. Last few cycles of your breath. In fact, if you'd like, you can do a practice of counting down your last 8 breaths. And you have an inner dialogue, something similar to inhale 8, exhale 8, inhale 7, exhale 7, continuing until you get to 0. Fully immersed in the breath and in the counting. And no rush, but when you get to 0, lengthening your legs and pause. So for our next position, it's another water-inspired cooling pose called inverted waterfall. It's sometimes interpreted as inverted lake, which is a legs up the wall. However, we all have different situations, environments at home, and sometimes a legs up the wall doesn't work. If you don't have a wall space near you, you could use a chair. So I could easily put my calf muscles on the chair. Today I'm going to use this poof just because it's here, but you could do the same thing really with any kind of furniture. Or you could use stacked bolsters, anything you'd like. You could do legs up the wall. Literally anything where your legs are elevated a little bit is perfect. You might want to have a low blanket for your head. You might even want to cover with a blanket. But furniture like this little poof or like a chair often works really, really well. And one thing I wanted to mention is that this is our last pose before final relaxation. And the reason I mention that is some of you want to maybe make this extra cozy and you may like to stay here for the remainder of class. Some of you may prefer something else like Shavasana for your final pose. So I'll let you know when it's time to possibly move. Let's take a moment to picture a waterfall. It might be a real waterfall that you've seen. through your travels, or it might be a waterfall from a book or a movie or your imagination. For me, I'm thinking of the beautiful waterfalls I saw when I was in Bali, and in particular, a waterfall that actually was more man-made and carved out of stone and part of a water temple, place where people go to renew themselves. And so now at this point, you have that option to stay as you are if you know that you're comfortable for staying here for final relaxation. Or if you prefer, you might want to find something even more comfortable. But as we head into our final relaxation, it's an opportunity for integration. The word yoga is about feeling whole through all the layers of who we are, all the different roles that we play, the masks that we wear. Calling your awareness back to the present moment, knowing that you can stay exactly as you are and there's no need to move unless you want to. If you decide you want to move, then we'll move slowly, maybe starting with movement through the hands or feet, and then spreading that movement through the joints. And I always recommend, especially if your legs were elevated this whole time, to spend a few moments on your side. This sideline position is a really lovely in between. You can linger in the in between, you could stay on the ground, or maybe you feel ready to sit up. And if you have a particular way you like to end class, maybe it's hands in prayer, maybe it's a different mudra or hand placement. One more time, noticing how you feel. And I thank you for your practice of yoga.